I'm such an awesome player, I effortlessly beat Hirake Ponkikki. Please ignore how the box says the game is for 3 to 6 year olds. Hirake Ponkikki is Japan's answer to Sesame Street. The show was explicitly inspired by Sesame Street, and the show teaches kids some basic counting, shapes, and life lessons. Two of the most popular characters from Hirake Ponkikki are the sibling monsters Gachapin and Mook. They're basically the show's mascots. So naturally, when they made a video game, those two were the stars. The game has players take on a set of 5 mini-games, and repeat those mini-games over and over again, slightly more difficult every time. At the outset, you can choose if you want to be Gachapin or Mook. You can't switch between them, so for most of my playtime I was Gachapin. The minigames are all laid out on a map, and you can do the set of 5 in any order, but you have to complete all 5 before you're allowed to move on to the next map. In this minigame, the other monster climbs into a flying saucer, and then they're shuffled up. You just have to pick out which one they're in. You have 3 chances before the monster reveals themselves and shuffles once more, and 5 chances total to complete the game. You have to find your sibling 3 times like this before you can go on. As the difficulty increases, the shuffling of the flying saucers becomes longer. In this platforming game, the screen automatically scrolls forward, and fruit will occasionally appear. Both the A and B button jump here, and on very rare occasions, enemies will appear that you have to jump over. The fruit doesn't always appear on the right-hand side of the screen. Sometimes it appears almost right before it scrolls off, so it's better to stick to the left-hand side than the right. In this minigame, you have to beat your opponent in rock, paper, scissors a number of times before you can continue. The number of times you have to win increases as the game goes on. The other monster always throws in a pattern, so once you've identified that, then winning is pretty easy, though the pattern increases in length on later stages. In the maze game, you just run around collecting the fruit, and then go to the smiley face to end the stage. You have to avoid the worms that are crawling around, but they're slow and move in a fixed pattern. The final minigame drops a shape on you, and you just have to match the shape. On later stages for this one, they just make you match more shapes. There are 6 islands that you have to clear of the 5 minigames, and they'll go by pretty quickly. I have to say, I'm kind of dubious of the educational value of this game as well. The only one that I could see a real case for is the rock, paper, scissors game, which is weird, but it's the only one that actually engages with someone intellectually. Any kid who's early enough to be working with spatial understanding for the shapes minigame probably can't handle the controller. The maze and the platformer are really thin on educational content, and the 3-card Monty, or 8 UFO Monty, well, it doesn't even shuffle things around that much. There's nothing wrong with being a game for small children, it's just that this is packaged as an educational game, and it really is not. And I can't really see it as being an engaging game even for really young children. The only thing this game has for kids are the familiar characters. At least the 2-player mode here allows for 2 kids to get in on it, but I think that just makes some of the mini-games more frustrating. As you might expect, in Japan, Hirake Ponkikki is really only remembered for its connection to the television show. That gets it a little bit of attention, but it's really not something people go back to revisit. I found Hirake Ponkikki to be kind of bland. Again, it's a game for 3 to 6 year olds, so I'm not really in the best position to judge it, but there really wasn't a whole lot here that was engaging. In this series, I've played games that were targeted at young kids that still had something to them. And this feels like what an adult who doesn't have any experience with young children would think that young children would like. Really, the only reason to play Hirake Ponkikki these days is if you are playing every single Famicom game. Otherwise, just don't bother.